Live. Welcome everyone. We're just waiting for Dominique. He just went to go grab some water.
Sorry.
Dominique, just to let you know, we are live.
Okay.
All right. So welcome everybody that is watching. I just want to clarify. Yes, we are live. Yeah. Welcome to everyone. This is our third CyberSec chat. We're really starting to enjoy these, or at least I know I am. I find it very interesting. Every conversation that we have, I'm learning more and more about cybersecurity. I know this is the very base of cybersecurity. The CIA triad is one of the most commonly mentioned things in data and security. So we're rounding off and finishing this CIA triad with the last but not least, availability. So that will be today's topic of discussion. Sorry, let me just get my notes up here so that this all goes smoothly. All right, so as a term, availability is essentially the promise that service will always be available. An example is when you type in Google, you expect Google to be up and running. So I think that at its utmost simple term describes what availability is. Yeah, so it ensures that network resources are readily available to authorized users. Now, just before we went live, Dominique and I were chatting about some of the biggest DDoS attacks. Do you want to share the story that you were telling me now?
Yeah, sure. So I was listening to a podcast like last week or the week before that, and they were indeed discussing one of the largest, if it's not even the largest, DDoS attacks that happened, I believe, in June. And I had the article here in front of me from Google. So apparently there was a DDoS attack that Google managed to block off that had a peak that had peaked at 46 million requests per second. And that was actually they wrote here like 76% larger than the previously reported record that they managed to fend off.
Yeah, so
And yeah,
just before we dive into that, I just want to clarify because I don't know if your network was definitely familiar with the term DDoS, but I'm not sure if my entire network is familiar with this term. So DDoS essentially stands for distributed denial of service. Can you just give a bit more insight into how a DDoS takes place and how we're all of our computers are essentially to some extent vulnerable to these attacks?
yeah, that's a good question. So what usually happens is, okay, if you go to a website, right, your browser makes a request to that website, and that's a request. So we were just talking about 46 million requests. That is one request. What is happening is that attackers are able to compromise websites, smart devices, everything that's that has a flaw that they can exploit, and they kind of include that in their bot network. So what they are then able to do is, instead of you going to that website, they control that. So they can go to any particular website, or they can make requests on behalf of that device. So essentially, all of these devices, they can say, okay, go to this one single place now and all at once. And if you do that with one device, it's one request. But if you infect many devices, many websites, and you control all of them, and you're then going to do that, then you can imagine the attack. And if these devices, continue to be breached, continue to be participating in bot networks, then it will become, a huge problem. And that's also what Google is saying, is that over the years, this will only increase.
Yeah, sure. Why do you think that is? That this will only increase?
Well, because there are a lot of companies that have great ideas, but then want to go to the market very quickly. And for some of these companies, the devices that they create, it's not only software; it's also hardware. So if you bring out something to the market in let's say mass production, and then you don't have good ways of updating it, well, then you brought a great product to the market, but maybe it's vulnerable because
Yeah.
you didn't spend enough time on making making properly, that it's secure enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then this will happen more and more because companies want to be the first in the market.
Yeah. Just to relate it to the conversations that I'm having with CISOs and team leads regularly, is they're all feeling this pressure from the market to meet the demand. There's a really high demand, especially in today's world. We want the best, the quickest. Everything has to happen now, and I try and express to them, well, they do understand it, but they can't really deal with that pressure. That pressure is quite a heavy load to lift.
Hmm.
And what's nice about this is a perfect segue into DevSecOps, is it incorporates security into your development and operations cycle.
Exactly.
It helps businesses keep up with this market demand. Look, I don't think you can ever meet it 100%
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
that's unrealistic, but
Yeah.
it sure helps. It really, really does.
Yeah, and I mean that's what we do for a living, right? We try to find out how can we, help businesses to do that as efficiently and effectively as possible, right?
Yeah,
Because you cannot be 100% secure,
yeah,
but you want to do as much as possible to not, either end up in a kind of bot network. What is then, you're becoming famous because it's going to be the one of the largest DDoS attacks, but that's
yeah.
just something that you don't want your devices or your software or your website to be involved in.
Yeah, I think that also really ties in quite nicely to my LinkedIn header. It
Mm,
speaks about cybersecurity, and it's kind of like having an alarm or a really good lock on your car. It's not going to stop people from trying to break in,
mm,
but they'll look for an easier target. And I think, there's this a stigma around security in a company that has got quite a negative connotation. I've also been watching podcasts and just listening to how CISOs view security, and not CISOs in particular, but organizations. And security is kind of it's seen as the naggy, like, no, 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 we've got to have this secure before we launch it.
mm.
Um, and I guess when the goal is to just get it onto the market, I can see it from their perspective, but you also can't ignore it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we still have a long way to go, but that's why education is so important, and training, because that really helps to make people understand, what are the benefits, why should you be doing this, what can go wrong if you don't do it properly,
Yeah,
and then because in the end it's all about your risk appetite and making a conscious decision. Yeah.
yeah,
And that's sometimes not even the level that companies are at. They are not even able to make that decision because they don't have either the data or the maturity enough to be able to do that.
yeah, yeah. So it's interesting. There's two types of uh, denial of service attacks. There's just your regular DOS, which is quite easy to detect. It's
Hmm.
usually coming from one source, while a DDoS is a lot more challenging as it comes from multiple sources. And you were expressing to me as well just before we went live how some people can be part of a DDoS attack and they're not even fully aware. They
Yeah.
don't know that their product, not their product, but their computer is part of this attack.
Yeah.
I mean, to what extent? This is just a random question, just to put this
Yeah.
out there. But I've noticed Apple Watches are, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Uh, could that be part of a DDoS attack?
I mean, essentially, every device that is connected to the internet
Wow.
that can make some kind of request can participate in the DDoS. Yes, for sure.
So the scale
Um,
of this is just unimaginable. I mean,
Yes, and that's why Google is also saying, okay, it will become bigger. That's also a trend that they are seeing. But to put it in perspective, 46 million requests a second that they blocked off for a customer. That's the same amount as all of the daily traffic to Wikipedia in 10 seconds.
My word.
And like you mentioned, it's a DDoS attack is you have to have pretty sophisticated ways in order to detect if it's proper proper request or not, because otherwise you will be blocking off your users thinking that they are actually the ones that causing the DDoS attack, but they are not. So Google has these systems developed where they actually analyzing the traffic and could detect that this is actually going to be a DDoS attack. It's not going to be traffic that it's coming for customers, but malicious traffic. And then they were able to already start putting some mitigations in place before it peaked at the DDoS level, and they were able to block it off and make sure that still the people could access that service. They are not disclosing what kind of customer this was, but it can be really also mission critical devices or systems.
Yeah, and what type of methods do we see to either identify, the source of the DDoS attack or to prevent DDoS attacks?
What kind of methods? Well, to be honest, Ryan, I'm not a DDoS expert, so I'm sure that there will be other experts that can tell more about that. But like I said, it's really analyzing the traffic and finding out if it's a real customer or if it's malicious. And there are several ways of doing that. But again, I'm not an expert in that.
See, that's something for me to research then. So I think it's also quite interesting to note just how easily you can become, let's say, a pawn in this game of chess. Let's call it that. Just by clicking on infected internet links, you can install the malware onto your computer without you even knowing, which is quite crazy. I think I'm not sure if I'm getting educated here at the same time, and I hope that people watching this are also. I feel like it's okay to ask simple questions because everyone can learn from this. So, does a VPN protect you from any of this?
So, you mean protecting you of becoming infected, becoming a part of the bot network?
Are there other ways that we can protect our computer by just an average user, not someone part of an organization, but just to protect your computer from being a pawn?
No, a VPN network would not help you in that. It would just even make it better for the attackers, because
really?
A VPN network allows you to reroute your traffic from a different destination. So that's essentially what a VPN does. And then if you would get infected, your traffic would just be going through a different location, and then
so it's actually benefiting them.
in some sense, yes.
Wow. All right. So then, what piece of advice could you give? Would you just say, visit secure websites, don't click on, random ad pop-ups and links and all sorts. Make sure.
Well, I think in that sense, it's just the usual, let's say, security hygiene, that you need to follow regarding your own devices. But because we're talking about availability, there are two sides of the story, right? There's either, making sure that your products are safe enough, are not compromised to actually be part of a bot network, right? And the other thing is, okay. If you want to mitigate, such a DDoS attack, you need to actually have things in place from other providers that can that actually have that kind of devices that can help you in detecting or blocking off traffic. So, for example, what we as Everable use is we use the Cloudflare network. So they are very good in these kind of mitigation possibilities. But at some point, I also see that if these attacks get larger and larger, to some extent, these services will also not be free enough anymore, or free anymore from those providers. So the smaller businesses, I'm not sure how they can then protect themselves if they don't have the proper funds or means to be behind such a provider. But I also had a question for you, Ryan, because the term availability and that a service is available for you at the moment that you need it. What did pop up in your head, like the first thing?
So I think
or did it even maybe happen to you? Because I have an example of where actually, like a few months ago, it happened to me, and I'm not sure that it doesn't always have to be, of course, a DDoS or a DOS attack, but it was an availability from a critical system that I needed to use and I couldn't.
Yeah. So mine isn't as critical, but I do have an example, and it's quite a while ago that essentially WhatsApp crashed. It wasn't working, right? Now, I know I use WhatsApp every single day. I think I speak for a lot of people when I say that we take it for granted. It's instant messaging, it's free, it's just so convenient. And then you forget, as soon as WhatsApp crashed, my girlfriend will laugh if she's watching this, but she thought, I can't get hold of my boyfriend. It's like this little bit of a mad panic situation. And I remember we were looking for different apps that we could download to try and get in touch with each other. But the thing is that WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook are all pretty much under the same
Meta.
Yeah. So we couldn't message each other on Instagram or Facebook or anything like that. And then we started using another application, right? So what's interesting is people's loyalty isn't very people aren't very loyal or dedicated to these apps because it's quite disposable. There's plenty of other not opportunities, but options. So if you it goes back to this reoccurring theme of the reputation of a company, whether it's confidentiality, integrity, or availability. Whenever one of these main pillars of data and security is broken, people are very quick to find another alternative. So yeah, that was my personal experience when it came to a service not being available to me. I don't know, you've probably got something a bit more technical, but
no, like in my situation, it's funny because the last time we also talked a little bit about it, but it is actually banking. So a while back, I of course want to pay my employees in a timely manner, and everything was arranged, and I wanted to go into our banking environment and pay out the salaries, and then I couldn't. It said just, we are having technical difficulties. Please come back later. And then I'm thinking, please come back later. Well, I want to pay my employees, and this is not as critical, but still, you want to pay your employees on time. And if it would have taken days, then I would have already started thinking about, well, I have to, run to an ATM machine, get everything in cash, so I can pay my people. And sometimes, I'm quite like, okay, there are different systems that we use. If we cannot access them, it can become very critical. And for example, I don't know when this happened, like a year back or so. We also had like a hospital in the Netherlands that had a ransomware attack. So this was not a DDoS attack, but a ransomware attack, and all of the systems got locked. And they actually had to move patients to another hospital because the doctors were not able to use their computers. So it's also kind of, availability a matter, because they just cannot access it. And for these mission critical devices and software, well, you don't want to get a phone call like, sorry, we couldn't help your one of your family matters because we couldn't access the computer, and we couldn't execute the procedure or no one wants to get that kind of phone call.
Yeah, that's quite a scary thought. Um, but I'm sure, you know, as a hospital, they've got plan B, you know. But I mean, when it's someone's life on the line, it's the pressure's on, you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's just a prime example that these things do happen, and it's important. I think that kind of ties in nicely, just to round up this episode, or this conversation. Is one of our main goals is to create awareness about cybersecurity, you know, and to kind of raise the flag about it and get it out there, because, you know, there's, as I said before, this negative connotation with security, but it's important that it's brought to the surface. And I see it more and more every day when I go on LinkedIn to check my messages. My feed is just filled with cybersecurity,
Yeah.
and it's great. And everyone is saying the same thing, that it's got to be given a bigger platform, and it, you know, we've got to like spread the word about it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and I think we also, I mean, we are making, you know, we are making improvements, but you know, change is coming slowly, and unfortunately, you know, criminals, hackers, they have unlimited amount of time. So sometimes it needs to go a little bit faster than just slow. But I mean, that's why, you know, there are certain regulations in place for hospitals and other, you know, critical places where they use something regarding IT, right? And then, but then again, these procedures also need to be constantly updated, need to be understood, need to be checked.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, I mean, there is, it's a fact that there is a, you know, cybersecurity shortage of people. So yeah, it's a real problem.
yeah, yeah. Well, Dominique, we're right on time for about 20 minutes, so I think it's a good time for us to wrap it up. So just to
Did we sorry to interrupt you, Ryan, did we maybe get some questions from the audience?
yes, yes, that's a good.
Maybe we can check it, because I cannot see it here. Maybe briefly 1 minute to take one of them.
I don't see any questions on my side.
Okay. Well, then for next time.
Yeah, for next time, you know, if we see the questions afterwards, then we can always address them in 2 weeks' time. But yeah, thank you, Dominique, for joining. Very informative as always, and it's nice to chat to you about these things, and, you know, gain my own insights as well, because I always come away from these cybersec chats learning and having a better understanding of it. So I think it's great. Thank you everyone as well for joining, and yeah, we will see you in 2 weeks. Have a nice
Yeah.
Friday.
Thanks, Ryan.
Okay, bye.